Part 1. The Flame Within. Understanding Lust. The very word can make hearts race, cheeks flush, and eyes turn away in embarrassment or light up in fascination. It is a word heavy with meaning, coated in centuries of judgment, desire, taboo, and truth. But what exactly is lust? Is it a sin, a spark, a curse, or a calling? Today, we begin a journey through the many dimensions of lust, not to condemn it, nor to glorify it blindly, but to understand it. Because in understanding, we find wisdom. In wisdom, we find freedom. Lust is desire at its most primal. It's the electric pull between bodies, the ache of anticipation, the heat of longing. It resides deep in our bones, older than language, older than thought. It pulses beneath the surface of civilization, whispering of connection, of life itself. To be lustful is to be alive. Yet, in our modern world, lust is often misunderstood. It is hidden under layers of shame, mischaracterized as something dirty or dangerous. For centuries, lust has been labeled as a force to be feared, a temptation to be resisted, a sign of moral weakness. But the truth is far more nuanced. Lust, like fire, can burn, but it can also illuminate. It can destroy, but it can also warm and nourish. When denied, it can fester. When embraced with awareness, it can empower. At its core, lust is not just about sex, it's about hunger, for touch, for intimacy, for expression. It's the drive that fuels creativity, that ignites passion, that pulls two people or more into magnetic orbits. It's not always rational, it's not always convenient, but it is always honest. It tells us something about ourselves, what we crave, what we fear, what we suppress. We are born into a world that is both obsessed with and terrified of lust. Advertisements flaunt it, art celebrates it, religions warn against it, and society struggles to control it. We are told to be desirable, but not desiring, to be sexy, but not sexual, to want, but not too much. This double standard leaves many people confused and disconnected from their bodies, from their partners, from their own desires. And so we must begin with honesty. To speak of lust is to speak of power. Lust can be chaotic, yes, but it can also be sacred. It is a language older than words, a form of knowing that happens in the body before the mind has time to catch up. It teaches us to listen to the beat of our hearts, to the whispers of our skin, to the energy that flows between us and others. It is not shameful to feel lust. It is human. There is beauty in desire. There is truth in wanting. And there is dignity in claiming our right to feel, to explore, to connect. Lust, when divorced from manipulation and anchored in consent, can be a force of healing. It can bring people together in moments of deep vulnerability and ecstatic pleasure. It can teach us about boundaries, about communication, about what it means to be truly present. But lust also demands responsibility, because when unchecked, it can lead to harm. When wielded without respect, it can become a weapon. The power of lust is not something to fear, but it is something to wield wisely. Like all powerful forces, it must be tempered with care, intention, and empathy. Lust without consent is not lust, it is violence. Lust without awareness is not passion, it is chaos. So let us not shrink from lust, nor surrender blindly to it. Let us meet it with open eyes and open hearts. Let us learn from it, dance with it, and understand its rhythm, because in doing so, we reclaim a part of ourselves that has too long been silenced. We become more fully human, not despite our desire, but because of it. In the chapters that follow, we will explore how lust shows up in relationships, in culture, in identity, and in spirituality. We will look at how it shapes and is shaped by the world we live in. We will talk about pleasure and pain, fantasy and reality, freedom and responsibility. This is not just a speech about lust. It is a celebration of life in all its sensual, vulnerable, radiant complexity. Because to know lust is not just to know heat, it is to know light. Part 2. The Mirror of Desire. Lust and Identity. Lust is more than a fleeting feeling. It is a mirror. When we gaze into the eyes of desire, we are not only seeing another person, we are seeing ourselves reflected back. Lust reveals who we are beneath the surface, our longings, our fears, our insecurities, and our strength. It shows us how we relate to power, how we define beauty, how we shape our sense of worth. For many people, identity and desire are tangled together like vines, growing, twisting, sometimes constricting. Our sexual orientation, gender identity, body image, and self esteem all influence the way we experience lust. Some of us were told that to want is wrong. Others were taught that our bodies are objects to be consumed but never celebrated. Still others were never taught anything at all, left to navigate lust like a ship without a compass. But lust does not care about cultural scripts. It speaks in its own tongue. It doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't apologize. It simply is. This can be both liberating and terrifying. For those raised in environments that shamed desire or denied pleasure, discovering one's lustful nature can feel like breaking a taboo. But it is also an act of liberation. To claim one's desire is to claim one's truth. Whether that desire is tender or wild, queer or straight, monogamous or polyamorous, quiet or loud, it is valid, it is real, and it deserves space to breathe. Our society often tries to fit lust into narrow boxes. We are taught what is normal, what is acceptable, what is too much. But lust does not fit neatly into categories. It is as diverse as humanity itself. Some people feel it constantly, others rarely. Some find it in emotional connection, others in raw physical chemistry. Some find it only with themselves. All of these experiences are legitimate. Lust is not a uniform force. It adapts, it evolves, it responds to who we are and how we grow. It may be shaped by trauma, enhanced by confidence, challenged by illness, awakened by experience. It changes over time, just as we do. And in that change lies a profound truth that we are not static beings. We are living stories, and lust is one of the ways those stories are told. And yet, the shame around lust still lingers like a fog. So many carry wounds from years of repression, judgment, or violation. People who have been shamed for their bodies, who have been told they are too much or not enough. People who have been punished for wanting, or who have been told they are broken for not wanting enough. In healing from these wounds, we must reclaim our right to desire, and to do so on our own terms. This reclamation is deeply personal. It may mean unlearning harmful beliefs. It may mean exploring one's own body with curiosity and kindness. It may mean seeking therapy, opening up in a relationship, or simply allowing oneself to feel pleasure without guilt. The journey toward embracing lust is not always easy, but it is always worthwhile. Lust also intersects with gender in powerful ways. Men are often taught that desire is their birthright, but only if expressed in dominant, performance-based ways. Women are frequently taught that desire is dangerous, something to be hidden or controlled. Non-binary and transgender people may face even deeper challenges, navigating a world that often refuses to acknowledge their existence, let alone their desires. But the truth is this: everyone deserves to experience lust in a way that honors their identity. Everyone deserves to feel seen, safe, and celebrated in their longing. Lust should not be a battlefield where worth is proven. It should be a playground where authenticity is expressed. When we talk about lust and identity, we also talk about belonging. Because to be desired is to be recognized. To feel desire is to feel alive. And when that desire is mutual, respectful, and free from shame, it becomes a beautiful affirmation of who we are. Lust can empower us to say, "This is what I want." It can teach us to voice our needs, to set boundaries, to ask for what brings us joy. It can bring us into deeper relationship with our bodies, turning them from battlegrounds into temples. And perhaps most importantly, it can remind us that we are not alone, that others long too. Others ache too. Others dream of touch, connection, and acceptance, just as we do. To deny lust is to deny part of our humanity, but to embrace it, to look into its mirror and see ourselves with compassion and courage, is to reclaim our wholeness. And so we continue forward. In the next chapter, we'll explore how lust shapes and is shaped by relationships, how it can ignite connection, challenge intimacy, and reveal both the ecstasy and the vulnerability of being truly known. Part 3, Fire Between Us, Lust in Relationships. Lust, when shared, becomes a bridge. It connects one body to another, one soul to another, not through words, but through breath, touch, sensation. In relationships, lust can be both a spark and a spark that ignites connection, and a compass that points us toward deeper knowing, deeper intimacy, and sometimes deeper conflict. Lust may be what draws us together, but it is not always what keeps us together. In the beginning of love, it burns brightly. It dances across skin and smiles. It makes even the simplest moments feel charged with possibility. This is the honeymoon of desire, when bodies are new to each other, when mystery lingers in every kiss. And it is beautiful. It should be cherished. But like all flames, lust shifts over time. In long-term relationships, lust must be tended like a garden. It does not disappear, but it can grow quiet if ignored. Life steps in, responsibilities, routines, stress, fatigue. Intimacy becomes familiar, which can be comforting, but also predictable. This is where many couples struggle. They wonder why the fire doesn't feel the same, why the magnetism isn't as strong. But lust is not a problem to solve. It is a rhythm to adapt to. Desire evolves, it matures, it asks new questions. In a lasting relationship, lust becomes less about novelty and more about depth, less about performance and more about presence. It becomes an invitation to keep discovering your partner, not just their body, but their soul. To stay curious, to stay open, to keep choosing them, even as you both change. Communication becomes key. To sustain lust, we must be willing to speak honestly, not just about what we like, but about what we fear, what we crave, what we fantasize. Vulnerability fuels desire. It breaks down walls. It allows us to be truly seen. And in being seen, we are once again made new in the eyes of the other. Many couples find that desire is rekindled not in grand gestures, but in the small moments, a lingering glance, an unexpected touch, a shared joke that dissolves the weight of the day. It is in choosing to flirt again, to be playful, to explore new terrain, not because something is broken, but because we are endlessly capable of reinvention. But not all lust is simple. Sometimes it arises in complicated ways. We may feel it for someone other than our partner. We may feel it when we least expect it, at a time of grief, of confusion, of change. We may feel ashamed for wanting at all. In these moments, it is vital to meet ourselves with compassion, not judgment. Lust does not always follow rules. but we do have the power to choose how we respond to it, with integrity, with clarity, with care. Consent is the cornerstone of all healthy expressions of lust in relationships. Desire should never be coerced, never be assumed. Whether in a new romance or a marriage of decades, the presence of mutual agreement, mutual enthusiasm, is what transforms lust from a risk into a gift. We must always honor the sacredness of choice. Lust also thrives in honesty. It fades in resentment. Unspoken frustrations, unmet needs, emotional distance, all of these can dim the light of desire. That is why emotional intimacy is so closely tied to physical intimacy. The more we feel safe to be ourselves, the more freely lust can move between us. And yet, some relationships are not meant to last. Lust may burn bright, but connection may not run deep, or perhaps it once did, but time has shifted what once aligned. Part of maturity is knowing when to stay and when to let go. Lust can be a teacher, even in endings. It shows us what we value, what we need, what we must learn next. In open relationships, in monogamous partnerships, in casual encounters, wherever lust lives, it brings with it the potential for growth. It teaches us about trust, about boundaries, about joy. It reminds us that to love someone does not mean to own them, that desire, like love, is not about control, it is about connection. Some partners may experience desire differently. One may have a high libido, another a low one. One may be adventurous, another more reserved. These differences do not mean incompatibility. They mean conversation is needed, respect is needed, understanding is needed. When both people feel heard and valued, solutions can be found. And when they cannot, grace is needed to part with dignity. Lust is not a guarantee in relationships, but it is a powerful opportunity. It invites us to know one another on levels that go beyond the surface. It asks us to be present, to be kind, to be curious. It reminds us that even in love, we are still individuals, with our own desires, our own needs, our own inner fires. In the next chapter, we'll explore how culture shapes the way we view and experience lust, how media, religion, and history have influenced our beliefs, and how we can begin to reclaim our own truth in the face of those stories. Part 4. Scripts and Shadows. Lust in Culture. Lust does not exist in a vacuum. It is born inside us, yes, but it grows in the soil of culture. Every society tells a story about desire. Some whisper it behind closed doors. Some shout it from billboards. Some bury it under centuries of silence. But everywhere, lust is shaped by the myths, morals, and messages we've inherited. We are taught from a young age what is acceptable to want, what is dangerous to feel, what is shameful to express. These teachings are often subtle, a look, a rule, a dress code, and they are often contradictory. One moment, we are told to suppress our desire. The next, we are sold images designed to provoke it. We are saturated with lust, but starved of the tools to understand it. Media, for instance, is a powerful mirror and a powerful manipulator. Films, advertisements, music, and fashion all project an idealized version of lust. They show us what's sexy, what's hot, what's desirable. But too often, this version is narrow, exclusionary, and unrealistic. It favors certain bodies, certain genders, certain dynamics. It leaves little room for the full spectrum of human desire. In these cultural scripts, lust is often portrayed as conquest, a chase, a performance. It is not about mutuality, it is about domination. This creates a distorted view of what lust can be. It encourages people to see others as objects, not equals, and it discourages emotional vulnerability, the very thing that makes desire meaningful. Religion, too, has shaped our relationship with lust. In many traditions, lust is cast as a temptation, a sin, a fall from grace. This framing can have a deep impact, especially when absorbed during childhood. People grow up fearing their own bodies, mistrusting their own feelings. They learn to see lust as a threat to their spiritual worth. But not all teachings are rooted in shame. In some traditions, desire is sacred. In ancient temples, sexuality was honored as a path to transcendence. Tantric practices, for example, view lust not as a distraction, but as a doorway to intimacy, to energy, to divine union. These perspectives remind us that desire and divinity are not enemies. They can be allies. Still, the shadows of repression linger. Many people carry cultural baggage when it comes to lust: unspoken rules, inherited guilt, generational silence, and in the absence of open dialogue, misinformation thrives. People turn to unreliable sources, porn, gossip, hearsay, for their education on desire. They are rarely taught to ask, "What does my body say? What does my heart want?" To reclaim lust, we must first unlearn the myths. We must question the scripts we've been handed. Who benefits when we are disconnected from our desires? Who profits when we feel ashamed of our bodies? Often, the answer is systems of power: patriarchy, consumerism, control. A person who is alienated from their own pleasure is easier to manipulate, to market to silence. Lust then becomes a radical act. To desire on your own terms is to resist. To feel pleasure without guilt is to defy. To center your truth, your boundaries, your body, your joy. That is revolutionary. Representation matters. When we see diverse bodies, diverse desires, diverse dynamics reflected in culture, we expand the possibilities of what lust can look like. We affirm that there is no one right way to want, that there is no single mold for beauty, for chemistry, for connection. Education matters too. Honest, inclusive conversations about desire, starting in schools, in families, in communities, can help dismantle generations of shame. When we teach that consent is essential, that pleasure is natural, that communication is powerful, we create a world where lust can be explored safely, joyfully, responsibly. Technology, too, plays a growing role in shaping desire. Dating apps, social media, virtual experiences, all of these influence how we connect, how we flirt, how we experience longing. There is potential here for freedom, for discovery, but also risk. Lust in the digital age moves fast. It can become disconnected from the body, from context, from care. We must learn to navigate this landscape with intention. Culture shapes lust, but we shape culture. Every time we speak openly, love authentically, listen without judgment, we contribute to a new story. A story where lust is not feared or exploited, but honored. A story where desire is not something to hide, but something to explore with respect, creativity, and choice. In the next chapter, we will explore the spiritual side of lust, how desire can be more than physical, how it can become a path to presence, awakening, and sacred connection. Part 5: Sacred Fire, the Spiritual Dimension of Lust. To speak of lust as sacred may sound radical to some. For many, lust and spirituality have been framed as opposites: flesh versus soul, temptation versus virtue. But what if this split is not truth, but tradition? What if lust, far from being an enemy of the spirit, is actually one of its most powerful expressions? Lust is energy, raw, pulsing, primal, but also creative, connective, and alive. It's the same life force that moves the tides, that brings spring to bloom, that inspires art and music and dreams. It is not limited to sex. It is the flame that stirs us awake, that calls us to live more deeply, more vividly, more fully. In many spiritual paths, especially those less influenced by strict dogma, desire is not condemned but channeled. Tantric traditions, for instance, do not separate sexuality from spirituality, they unite them. They teach that the body is not an obstacle to enlightenment, but a gateway. That pleasure is not a distraction from truth, but a way into it. In this light, lust becomes a form of prayer, not the kind spoken in hushed tones or memorized lines, but the kind felt in the trembling of skin, in the closing of eyes, in the total surrender to the present moment. Lust asks us to be here, now, to drop our masks, to feel everything. And in that surrender, we touch something eternal. But to access the sacred side of lust, we must slow down. We must turn inward, listen, breathe. We must treat our desires not as demands to be obeyed, but as messages to be heard. Lust is not just about doing, it's about being. Being awake to sensation, being in tune with intuition, being honest with ourselves and others. This does not mean every act of lust is spiritual. It can be, but not always. Lust without consent, without care, without presence, that is not sacred, that is selfish. True spiritual lust is rooted in love, not always romantic love, but love in its broadest sense. Love as respect, as reverence, as recognition of the divine in another. In this sense, lust can become a sacred exchange, not a transaction, but a transformation. Two people, or more, coming together not just to satisfy hunger, but to witness, to explore, to celebrate life. To say, I see you, I feel you, I meet you here, in this moment, with openness and awe. The spiritual dimension of lust also invites us to explore our own bodies with tenderness, to move from shame to celebration, to learn the rhythms of our own desire, not as something to fear or control, but as something to honor. Our bodies are not separate from our souls. They are the instruments through which spirit is felt, expressed, and made real. When we begin to see lust as a sacred fire, not just a spark of passion, but a source of life force, we change our relationship with it. We stop seeing it as something that controls us and start seeing it as something that teaches us. It shows us where we are blocked, where we are free, where we are hiding, and where we are most alive. For some, this journey may involve healing from wounds, trauma, repression, betrayal. The path to sacred lust is not always smooth, but healing itself can be spiritual. Reclaiming the right to feel, to want, to love. This is holy work. It is the work of liberation. Sacred lust also reminds us of our interconnection. When we desire, we reach out. We extend beyond ourselves. And in doing so, we remember that we are not alone, that we are made for connection, not just in body, but in spirit. Many mystical traditions speak of union, union with the divine, union with truth. In lust, we glimpse this union in a tangible way. The merging of skin, of breath, of soul. It is not just physical, it is metaphysical. It hints at something beyond words, a remembering, a return. This is why lust must be honored, not hidden, not because every act of desire is sacred, but because it can be. Because within each flicker of longing is the potential for awakening. Because within the heat of the body is the light of the soul. And so we must not turn away from lust. We must turn toward it with reverence, with respect, with wonder, not to worship it blindly, but to walk with it wisely, to let it guide us, not away from ourselves, but deeper into the truth of who we are. In the next chapter, we'll explore the shadow side of lust, how it can become destructive, addictive, or harmful, and how we can bring it back into balance when it strays. Part 6. When the Flame Burns. The Shadow Side of Lust. Lust is powerful, and like all powerful forces, it casts a shadow. When embraced with presence, consent, and care, lust can be beautiful, even sacred. But when twisted by fear, shame, or disconnection, it can lead us astray. This is not to demonize lust, but to acknowledge the very real pain that can arise when desire loses its way. The shadow side of lust often emerges when we are not taught how to hold it. When lust is repressed, it doesn't disappear, it festers. It can become distorted, compulsive, or desperate. Instead of being a source of connection, it becomes a source of confusion, control, or harm. In our culture, many are taught to either suppress lust entirely or indulge it without reflection. Neither path leads to wholeness. Suppression can breed shame and secrecy. Indulgence without awareness can lead to objectification, addiction, or emotional detachment. Lust in balance invites intimacy. Lust out of balance can isolate us from others and from ourselves. We see this in the rise of compulsive behaviors, porn addiction, serial cheating, the pursuit of validation through conquest rather than connection. These patterns are not about desire, they are about pain, about trying to fill an emotional void with physical sensation, about mistaking touch for intimacy, climax for meaning. This is not a moral failing. It is a sign of unmet needs, a sign that somewhere along the line we were taught to numb instead of feel, to chase instead of connect. The cure is not condemnation, it is compassion and courage, the courage to look beneath the behavior and ask, what am I truly craving? What am I trying to escape? What is the wound beneath the want? Lust can also be used as a weapon. When someone uses another's desire for manipulation, domination, or control, the damage is deep. Consent is not just about saying yes, it's about being free to say no. It's about mutuality. Lust without respect is not love, it is exploitation. And we must name this. We must call out abuse and coercion wherever they exist. We must listen to survivors. We must build a culture where desire is guided by empathy, not entitlement, where boundaries are honored, not broken, where lust is paired with responsibility. The shadow side of lust also affects how we see ourselves. If we've been shamed for our desire, we may feel dirty or broken. If we've been rejected, we may question our worth. If we've been betrayed, we may shut down altogether. These are wounds that deserve healing, not through more lust, but through deeper love. Love for the self, love that listens, love that holds space. Sometimes the shadow shows up not in excess, but in absence. Some people feel disconnected from lust entirely, not because they lack desire, but because desire has been buried under trauma, grief, or fear. This too is part of the spectrum. There is no right amount of lust. There is only what is true for you. Healing the shadow side of lust requires honesty. It requires safe spaces to talk about our experiences, our struggles, our shame. It requires support from therapists, from partners, from communities who understand that desire is complex and that healing is possible. It also requires slowing down. When we slow down, we can feel again. We can notice the difference between what our body wants and what our pain wants. We can choose to respond, not react. We can reclaim our agency, our integrity, our joy. Lust, at its worst, becomes compulsive. At its best, it becomes conscious. It becomes a doorway into deeper relationship with others and with ourselves. And while the shadow may never fully disappear, it can be integrated. It can be brought into the light. This is what healing looks like, not perfection, but presence, not purity, but wholeness. It's saying, I have known both the beauty and the pain of desire, and I choose to walk forward with open eyes and an open heart, because even in the shadow, there is something sacred. The very fact that lust can hurt us means it matters. It touches something essential. And when we learn to hold it with care, with courage, with compassion, we are not just healing lust, we are healing life. In the next chapter, we'll explore how lust can be transformed into a creative force, how it fuels not only passion between people, but also the art, music, invention, and vision that shape our world. Part 7. The Creative Pulse. Lust as Inspiration. Lust is not only about touch, it's about energy, an energy so potent it spills beyond the body and into the world. When we talk about lust as fire, we often imagine it consuming. But what if it also creates? What if lust is not just a physical hunger, but a force of imagination, of inspiration, of artistic birth? Throughout history, artists, poets, musicians, and creators of all kinds have drawn from lust, not always in obvious ways, not always in erotic depictions or sensual verse, but in the raw intensity that desire brings. The ache of longing, the electric thrill of being alive, the vulnerability of being moved by beauty or by another person. Lust is the seed of creation because it demands expression. The same energy that pulls two people toward each other is the energy that pulls a painter to canvas, a dancer to the floor, a writer to the page. Lust awakens the senses. It sharpens perception. It pushes boundaries. It invites us into the unknown, where rules fall away and only feeling remains. Think of the great love songs, the whispered poems, the sweeping sculptures, and burning performances. So many of them are born from desire, from the yearning for connection, the memory of touch, or the fantasy of what might be. Lust brings color to the world. It refuses to let us stay numb. But the connection between lust and creativity is not just metaphorical, it is physiological. The hormones that flood the body in arousal, dopamine, oxytocin, adrenaline, are the same ones that fuel excitement, risk taking, and bold ideas. This is why lust and creativity so often arrive hand in hand. They both involve letting go of control. They both require trust, trust in the process, in the body, in the unknown. When channeled with awareness, lust becomes a wellspring of innovation. It teaches us how to move with feeling, how to listen to what's inside, how to shape sensation into story, chemistry into craft. This doesn't mean all art is sexual. It means all art is sensual. It touches the senses. It moves something in us. And that is the gift of lust. It reminds us how to feel. For many people, especially those who have experienced repression or trauma, creativity becomes a safe space to explore desire. Through painting, dance, song, and storytelling, we find ways to express what words alone cannot hold. We reclaim our voices. We transform pain into power. Even outside the arts, lust can awaken innovation. Entrepreneurs, inventors, leaders, those who feel deeply often create boldly. When we are alive to our senses, we become more attuned to possibility. We take risks. We pursue passion. We dare to dream. Lust sharpens instinct, and instinct leads to discovery. In relationships, too, lust and creativity go hand in hand. A playful, adventurous approach to intimacy fosters deeper connection. It invites experimentation, curiosity, fun. It keeps love alive not just through routine, but through renewal, through finding new ways to see, to touch, to express love and want. This is especially important in long-term bonds, where the initial spark may evolve but doesn't need to disappear. Creative lust is not about novelty for its own sake. It's about presence, about engaging with each other in fresh, mindful ways, a spontaneous date, a handwritten letter, a shared fantasy, a new form of touch. Creativity nourishes desire, and desire fuels creativity. But this energy must be honored. It must be nurtured, not exploited. Too often, our culture tries to sell us desire, turning lust into a product, a trend, a status symbol. This commodification dulls the true power of lust. It tells us we need to look a certain way, buy certain things, perform a certain role to be desirable. It flattens something wild and sacred into something transactional. Real creativity doesn't come from comparison, it comes from connection. Real lust doesn't come from pretending, it comes from presence, from being fully in your body, from being fully yourself. To live lustfully is not to live recklessly, it is to live awake, to move through the world with a hunger for beauty, for truth, for expression, to let desire ripple through your art, your work, your life, not always sexually, but always sensually, to feel deeply, to create from that feeling. And when we do, we offer something vital to the world. We remind others of their own capacity to feel. We spark their own creativity. We become not just lovers of life, but givers of it. In the next chapter, we will explore how to cultivate a healthy relationship with lust, how to listen to it, how to honor it, and how to make peace with it, whether we feel too much or not enough. Part 8. Tending the Flame, Building a Healthy Relationship with Lust. Lust, like any natural force, needs care. Left untended, it can flicker out or rage out of control. But when nurtured with patience and wisdom, it becomes a light that warms rather than scorches, a steady flame rather than a consuming blaze. To cultivate a healthy relationship with lust, we must first stop fighting it. We must learn to listen. The first step is to meet lust with curiosity instead of judgment. When a feeling of desire arises, what do you do? Do you repress it? Indulge it blindly? Distract yourself? Or do you pause, breathe, listen? To have a healthy relationship with lust, we must allow ourselves to feel it without rushing to act or to shame ourselves for its presence. Desire does not always mean action. It does not always need to be fulfilled. Sometimes it simply needs to be acknowledged, to say, I feel this. This is part of me. That alone can be transformative. It takes the heat of urgency and cools it into clarity. In that space, we find choice. A healthy relationship with lust also involves knowing your body. Many people move through life disconnected from their senses, from their pleasure, from their own rhythms of arousal and rest. Reconnecting starts with slowing down, with tuning in, with asking, what do I like? What does pleasure feel like to me? What makes me feel safe, excited, alive? This kind of inquiry is not selfish, it is foundational. When we understand our own desires, we are better able to communicate them to others. We are more attuned to our needs, more able to navigate boundaries, and more capable of receiving pleasure without guilt. And when we feel safe in our own bodies, we can begin to share that safety with others. Consent is a crucial part of any healthy relationship with lust, not just with others, but with ourselves. Giving yourself permission to feel, to explore, to enjoy is an act of healing. So is recognizing when you don't want to, when desire is absent, or when it feels forced. Saying no to yourself, just as much as saying yes, is a sign of maturity, not failure. In intimate relationships, talking openly about lust can feel vulnerable, but it is necessary. Silence around desire leads to misunderstanding, miscommunication, resentment. When partners can talk about what they want, what they fear, what they need, they build trust. They create a shared space where lust can grow without pressure or shame. But what if lust feels absent? What if it's gone quiet? that too deserves compassion. Desire is not always constant. It moves in cycles. It is affected by stress, by trauma, by health, by time. Low or fluctuating desire is not a flaw. It is a signal, one that invites curiosity, not criticism. In those moments, ask gently, what does my body need? Rest, intimacy, novelty, safety? Sometimes reigniting desire isn't about doing more, it's about doing differently, releasing expectations, returning to playfulness, rekindling intimacy outside of sex through affection, attention, laughter. And if lust feels too overwhelming, if it dominates your thoughts, disrupts your life, or leads to choices that hurt you or others, that is also a call for compassion. Not shame, not self punishment, but reflection. Where is this hunger coming from? What is it trying to fill? What am I truly seeking? Support is available from therapists, from sex educators, from communities that offer safe, non judgmental spaces for exploring desire. Seeking help is not weakness, it is wisdom. It says, I care about myself enough to want more than just pleasure. I want peace. A healthy relationship with lust is one rooted in integration. It's not about always acting on desire or always resisting it. It's about weaving lust into your life as one thread among many, honoring it without letting it define you, listening to it without letting it drive you, celebrating it without letting it consume you. It's also about honoring others' lust, their right to feel, to express, to say yes or no. This creates a culture of respect, of consent, of mutual joy. When we hold space for one another's desire, we create relationships not just of passion, but of safety and trust. Ultimately, to cultivate a healthy relationship with lust is to treat it like a partner. You listen to it, you negotiate with it, you care for it, and in return, it teaches you about your needs, your truth, your capacity to connect. In the next chapter, we'll look to the future. What does a world look like where lust is not shamed, silenced, or exploited, but honored, understood, and celebrated? How do we build a culture that embraces healthy desire? Part 9, A Culture of Embodiment, Reimagining Lust in Our World. Imagine a world where lust is not a secret to be hidden, but a truth to be honored, where desire is not something to fear or manipulate, but something to explore, curiously, respectfully, joyfully. Imagine a world in which people are taught, from a young age, that their bodies are not battlegrounds, but sacred spaces, that their longings are not shameful, but human. This is not a fantasy, it is a vision, and it begins with each of us. To build a culture that embraces healthy lust, we must start by shifting the conversation. We must move from silence to speech, from distortion to truth, from performance to presence. This means creating spaces, homes, schools, relationships, media, where desire is discussed openly and honestly, without shame. It means teaching children and teenagers not just about the mechanics of sex, but about consent, boundaries, pleasure, and respect. It means showing them that their feelings are valid and that no one has the right to their body without enthusiastic agreement, that they are worthy of both safety and joy. It also means challenging the systems that have long distorted our views of lust. Patriarchy, which frames desire through domination and control. Puritanism, which teaches that pleasure is sinful. Capitalism, which turns desire into a commodity to sell and buy. These forces have shaped our understanding of lust, not to honor it, but to suppress or exploit it. A culture of embodied lust looks different. It values autonomy. It respects choice. It sees the body not as an object, but as a living, feeling, sacred home. It understands that desire is diverse, that it changes, that it cannot be controlled, but can be understood. In such a culture, media would reflect the full range of human desire, not just through glamorous images of sex appeal, but through real stories of connection, vulnerability, playfulness, aging, queerness, tenderness. We would see more bodies, more truths, more complexity, and less shame. In such a culture, relationships would not be built on rigid roles or unspoken rules, but on dialogue, on the courage to ask and to listen, to express wants and fears, to explore without pressure, to love without ownership. Lust, in this context, becomes a living conversation, a shared dance rather than a private demand. In such a culture, healing would be celebrated. Survivors of trauma would be believed and supported. People struggling with desire, whether too much, too little, or confused, would be met with care, not criticism. Therapy, education, and safe communities would be accessible, and no one would have to walk the path of understanding lust alone. Technology, too, would evolve. Apps, content, and digital spaces would prioritize consent and emotional safety. Algorithms wouldn't just exploit attraction, they'd support connection. Online spaces would become places of discovery, not distortion. And digital lust would become an extension of intimacy, not a substitute for it. We would also honor those who experience lust differently, asexual and aromantic people, survivors, those with disabilities or chronic illness, those who are celibate by choice or circumstance. Desire does not always mean physical lust. Intimacy wears many faces, and all are worthy of recognition. Reimagining lust also means embracing its spiritual potential. In rituals, in sacred relationships, in everyday acts of mindfulness, lust can become a source of presence, a reminder that to be alive is to be a body in motion, a heart in rhythm, a being capable of ecstasy and stillness both. To create a culture that honors lust is to invest in wholeness, in joy, in truth. It is to tell the next generation, you do not have to choose between being good and being real. You can be both. You can be grounded in values and alive in your desire. You can know your worth and still hunger for connection. You can love with your whole self, body, mind, and soul. This transformation will not come overnight, but it begins every time someone speaks honestly about what they feel, every time a parent answers a hard question with tenderness, every time a teacher makes space for consent, every time a couple dares to talk instead of assume, every time a person chooses love over shame. And it begins with you, your voice, your choices, your courage to meet desire not with fear, but with understanding. In the final chapter, we will come full circle. We will celebrate lust, not as a burden or a mystery, but as a gift, a reminder of our humanness, a spark of our aliveness, a sacred invitation to love more deeply, more honestly, more fully. Part 10. Coming Home to Desire. Lust as a Gift. Lust is not something outside us. It is not a mask we wear or a force that visits us without permission. It is part of who we are, a pulse within the body, a whisper within the soul, a flicker that reminds us we are alive. For too long, we have been taught to fear this part of ourselves, to silence it, bury it, hide it under layers of guilt and performance. But the truth is simple. Desire is not the enemy. It never was. Lust is a gift. It is the breath that deepens connection, the spark that animates our art, our relationships, our joy. It is not just about sex. It is about life. It's about the longing to be touched, seen, known. It's about the thrill of wanting and the tenderness of being wanted. It's about the mystery of being human and the miracle of feeling. To come home to lust is to come home to the body, to recognize it not as something to fix, control, or transcend, but as something to cherish. Every curve, every scar, every shiver of skin. This body is where we live, and lust invites us to live fully in it. To come home to lust is to come home to the heart, to know that desire is not just physical, it's emotional, relational, energetic. It is the flutter before a first kiss, the ache of missing someone, the moment your breath catches at the sight of beauty. All of this is lust in its wide and wondrous spectrum. To come home to lust is to come home to choice, to know you are not a slave to your urges, nor a stranger to your needs. You are sovereign. You get to choose what, who, when, and how. You get to say yes. You get to say no. And in that freedom, you find not chaos, but clarity. Lust teaches us to listen, not just to our own bodies, but to each other. It teaches us to ask, to wait, to honor silence and celebrate sound. It teaches us to be present, not just with skin, but with soul. And when shared, it becomes something bigger than pleasure. It becomes communion. You are allowed to want. You are allowed to feel. You are allowed to explore. There is no shame in hunger, only in harm, and lust, when met with love and responsibility, never harms. It heals. There will be moments when desire feels confusing, moments when it feels too loud or not loud enough, moments when you question your worth because of what you want or what you don't. In those moments, return to this truth: you are not broken. You are becoming. Lust will change as you do. It will soften, deepen, flicker, reignite. It will reflect your growth, your pain, your healing. It will be different at 20 than at 40, at 60, at 80. And in every phase, it will have something to teach you about your capacity to connect, about your resilience, about your radiant, unapologetic aliveness. Let us stop treating lust like a problem to be solved. Let us stop handing it over to systems that profit from our shame. Let us reclaim it as art, as power, as poetry, as truth. Lust is not a secret, it is a song, and it's time we learn to sing it again. To the teenagers unsure if their desires make them strange, they don't. You are discovering the language of your body. Take your time, ask your questions, trust yourself. To the adults who feel out of touch with their own passion, you are not too late. The fire is still there, maybe quiet, maybe buried, but waiting for attention, for softness, for breath. To the elders who have been told their days of desire are done, nonsense. Lust does not retire, it transforms. It dances differently, but it dances still. And to the survivors, the shamed, the silenced, you are not alone. Your story matters. Your healing is sacred. Your desire is still yours. You still get to write the next chapter. Lust is not perfect. It is not always clear, but it is always real. And when we walk with it, not behind it, not against it, but with it, it becomes a companion, a muse, a mirror, a guide. So let us honor lust. Let us tell the truth about it. Let us speak of it not with fear, but with reverence, not with shame, but with joy. Let us build a world where desire is not a wound, but a wellspring, a world where our children grow up knowing that their bodies are beautiful, that their boundaries are powerful, that their longings are nothing to fear. A world where we meet each other not in performance, but in presence, where lust is not a transaction, but a celebration. A world where we are free, not just to love, but to want. Because when we welcome lust back into our lives, into our hearts, into our culture, We do not become less human. We become more whole, and that, in the end, is what this speech has always been about. Coming home. Thank you for listening. Hit the button for more from Inspirational